All right. The floor is yours, darling.
All right, cool. So we are going to talk about the art of disbursement today, which has a fun name. But really, it's just all about the money that comes in and goes out during a transaction. And some things that can sometimes go wrong with that, because really, I mean, we all love to help people, but we're all here to get paid. So I want you guys to kind of understand what goes on to make sure you get your checks, to make sure your sellers get their checks, and everybody else that needs paid within their transaction. Have any of you ever had a situation where you weren't able to collect your check at closing, or do you remember why that might have been or anything like that?
I have.
And what was your situation, Jamie?
Because it was from a wire transfer and the wire transfer hadn't hit yet. So then I had to wait and get it in the mail.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And that's one of those things that really sucks, especially being me telling everybody that. But it's not ever a matter of, well, we don't want to do this. It is illegal for us to disperse funds before all funds are in and verified on our end. So I've been in that situation, from my perspective, having to be like, hey, I'm sorry. I know I have your check right here, but I cannot hand it to you. And I know as an agent and definitely as a seller too, with even, limited understanding of what's going on, that can be extremely frustrating, but there are reasons. I mean, that's the blanket reason. It's illegal. That's why I can't do it. But we're going to kind of dig in and see what's going on behind the scenes, why those things are the way they are, and what you can do to help. So I will share my screen. I actually have a couple screens today. I can't believe it. So I can see you at the same time, because I usually just talk to my own presentation. All right. So the art of disbursement. So why does it matter to you? So the first thing is that it ensures that you can set proper expectations for your client. So this might be something you can have a conversation on. And again, it always goes back to the reason that I even do these classes and these things is because I believe knowledge is power, and that is what creates those relationships with you and your client. So the more little conversations you have and the more times you're able to prove that, hey, you know what's going on, you know a little something about something, I think the stronger those relationships become, even if it's not a big deal. So this doesn't have to be, a coffee meeting with your client about it, but just so that they have an understanding of what to expect and what can possibly happen. It helps you anticipate and avoid funding delays. So once we dig into everything that can happen and how it goes, you'll kind of understand what you can do in your position to make sure that everything stays on track. And then it directly impacts how and when you get paid. So some common misconceptions is that funds are available immediately after closing. And Jamie brought up a great example here that that's not always the case. I mean, yes, the check is available. It's in my little folder that I have. But there are a lot of legalities and technicalities that require me to kind of check off a list of things before I can actually hand you that check. And most times everything's good, everything's fine. But I just want to kind of give you guys a peek behind the curtain about when those things do go wrong. And when I'm like, sorry, I can't disperse right this second, you understand why. Another misconception is that commission checks are always cut right at the closing table. It's the same situation. Commission checks, seller checks, all the other checks that we write out from the title company, those all have a set of rules that must be met before they can be dispersed. And the last misconception is that any form of payment is acceptable. So I know we've talked about this a couple times before. Can you tell me whatever it is you want to tell me, the two types of payments that are acceptable, or maybe even a type of payment that is not acceptable? Who has some info on that?
A wire or a certified check?
Yep, absolutely. That is the only acceptable means of funding your transaction. That's it. So cash, pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, absolutely not. Personal check, absolutely not. Sometimes I'll put a big old asterisk by this. Sometimes we'll do a money order if we're really, really, really in a pinch, but don't tell your clients that. That's just for your own knowledge. All right. So I made a little bank of Hammonds here so you can kind of see what goes on. So as the title company, we have a bank account that is third party and non-interest bearing. And that's important to know because I get a lot of pushback sometimes about like, if we're holding money in escrow and then the seller is going to be like, well, why would you release my money in a timely manner when you're making interest off of it? Like that, it's just not true. So our bank account that we have is third party. It's out in the wild, and it is non-interest bearing. The money just sits there and then goes back out to where it goes. And our goal is always zero. We're not making money on this escrow fund. So when the transaction starts and as it kind of continues, there are funds that come into our account. The first one is not always given to title. It's going to be the earnest money deposit. A lot of times the buyer's brokerage is going to hold that, which is fine as long as it's accounted for somewhere. But sometimes it does come into our account. And then closer to the end of the transaction, the buyer funds come into our account. The lender funds come into our account. And as some of you have personal experience with, sometimes your seller needs to bring funds. So all of those things have to enter our account and be verified by our controller before we can disperse anything out. So that's why there have been times, and maybe some of you have been actually at the closing table with me, where someone will try to show me like, no, hey, here's my confirmation that I sent it out. And that's lovely. At least I know it's on the way, but that does not meet the requirement that it is just deposited and confirmed in our account. Does that make sense? So we can't just kind of take your word for it, unfortunately, or your buyer or your seller or whatever the case may be. So only when all of these things are accounted for in our account can we begin to disperse. So aside from the earnest money deposit, I would say all of the funds for the transaction flow in and out of the title company. So then once everything is accounted for, we can start giving people money, because that's really what it's all about. Everyone gets every dime, and one or two people get the house, but still. So payoff liens and mortgages, those leave our account once the transaction is done and approved. Taxes and fees leave our account. Your commissions leave our account, and seller proceeds leave our account. So our goal is always going to be a zero balance as quickly as possible. And that's kind of the conversation that I have with people who have things in escrow, like sellers, that we have to hold a few $1,000s in escrow, and they're worried, when are we going to get it back? You guys aren't going to worry about this after the transaction. I can promise you that we do. We call at least once a week to try to get rid of our escrow. We want your people, whoever we are owed money to from escrow, we want it back in their hands as soon as possible. We don't make any money, and we don't have fun, having extra funds in escrow. It's not a good time for us. So as it relates to the Ulta, I just kind of want to show you how these checks or these disbursements come about. So it's mainly going to be on the seller side. There are a few things on the buyer side, but just for a quick review here, almost every line item on the Ulta is going to create a check that needs paid out, almost. So here you can see in prorations and adjustments, it just depends on whether or not these have been paid already, but these may create checks for us to send out. The next one here, settlement fees. So any fees that go to title obviously come right off the top, but then commissions, you'll know that this is going to create a check, and this, because these are all your commissions and broker fees. We're going to have to pay local and state realty transfer taxes. So that creates two checks that we need to send out. We were collecting for a payoff for the seller to pay off the home they were selling. So that's another check or wire, whatever that is going to need sent out. So all of these line items are going to create a new check or wire or some sort of disbursement for us to send out once everything is cleared. So that takes place after I finish up the closing, everything is in, I disperse checks to people that are at the table with me. And then all of these things happen behind the scenes. So if you ever notice, I always jump on my phone right after a closing. That's me telling my team like, hey, we're done. We're good to disperse. And then they're immediately going to start sending all of these things out so that everything is paid. So that's when your seller's payoff gets sent out overnight. That's when taxes are paid. This one had HOA dues. That's when those are paid. So everything is paid either that day or we overnight it to have it paid the day before. Any questions or comments so far on that? Any experiences? All right. So just kind of a recap here. So when can funds be dispersed? In Pennsylvania, disbursement can only happen when all funds have been received and verified. Again, verified being the key word here. We can't release funds until the lender has approved and wired all funds. All closing documents are signed and executed, and the title company has completed final checks. So the next thing I kind of want to zone in on is going to be that all closing documents are signed and executed. So we understand that all money has to be received and verified. But now, as we know, we have a huge stack of documents that need signing. And I think the biggest situation that, or the most often that I come across, is when you have an absent seller and for some reason they're not getting their documents back in time. That is another checkpoint that we have to meet before I can disperse any funds to anybody. So if we have sent absent seller documents to your seller and they said, yep, they'll be back tomorrow and closing's tomorrow, and we still don't have them in hand, I still can't disperse anything. That goes along with if I'm sitting there with your buyer and they're like, oh, I don't like that sentence on the mortgage, obviously, we can't change that, and they're refusing to sign that. Well, we don't have a deal. We can't disperse anything. So every document required by the lender and every document required by the title company has to be signed by all parties involved, again, before any funds can be dispersed. Some delays and some red flags. The most common cause is going to be a wire transfer. So when you think about a wire, and I even am guilty of saying like, yeah, it's almost instant, when you're not waiting on it, of course, because it's like when someone sends a wire and it gets in our account in less than an hour, but then you have that one person, it's like, oh shoot, I forgot, closing's in an hour, I'm going to send it right now. And then we're all sitting at the table waiting for it to hit, and it takes 2 or 3 hours. And the reason is because it just depends on your bank or your buyer or seller's bank, whoever is sending the money. You have some banks that will take in send out a wire as soon as the request is put in. And then you have some banks that do it in batches. So if I request a wire at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock, and I have a bank that just sends them out immediately, then all my wires are just going to go out as soon as I initiate them. But if I have a bank that does them in batches, then if I initiate a wire at 12 and 1 and 2, well, they did all the wires from 8 to noon, they sent them out at 12:01. And all the wires that came in from noon to 4, they sent them out at 4:01. So it just depends on your bank. And then once it hits the next bank, it's going to depend on how they apply the funds. So your wire is going to go into a big pool of funds incoming to that bank, and then they have to apply it to the individual account. So you can see how sometimes there might be a bigger delay than you might expect. So that is one way. I'm kind of going into the how can you help, but that's one reason that I would advise you as an agent, if you know that your buyer is going to do a wire, have them do it the day before. Just so we're not sitting around waiting, seller's tense, everybody's tense, all the documents are signed, and I'm just staring at my phone praying someone texts me soon that the funds are verified and I can get this wrapped up. I know that a lot of people have hesitation about wires, especially wiring the day before. I get it, but the truth is, if they send a wire to us and for some reason the deal doesn't go through, we're not going to keep their money. That's just not how it goes. It's illegal. We all really like our jobs, and so we wouldn't just try to keep their money and run away with it. But if you have a buyer that's, and I've had a few of these, like, no, I want to make sure everything's signed and then send the funds. One, we have to make sure everybody's okay with not getting paid that day. Or two, give me a call and have them call me and we'll kind of talk it through so they can have some comfort in why we have to do things that way. Another delay is going to be incorrect or missing information on payoff statements specifically. So to clear title, obviously we have to make sure everything that can become a lien or judgment or cloud on title concerning the property has to be paid off. I think I talked about this last time or the time before, where clearing title really just comes down to a payoff or a signature. It's one or the other. And if we're missing something like that, we can't disperse. The deal, again, is not done. And then, of course, issues with recorded documents. So if we're looking for something that should have been recorded, that's not. A good example is going to be a POA, a power of attorney. Those have a lot of kind of red tape around them to be used for real estate. But one of the main things is that it has to be recorded to be used in our transaction. And so we have an easy workaround for that. If they just bring the POA, if it's not recorded and they just hand it to me at closing, that's good enough, because then I'll make sure that we get it recorded. But if we know there's an outlying document that needs to be recorded to be used in our transaction and they don't bring it to closing, I can't disperse anything. So how can you help as an agent? So one, ensuring buyers understand the good funds requirement. And we know April has a good handle on that. And she's going to let them know that it's either going to be a wire or a cashier's check. And that if it is a wire, that hopefully we're going to send that at least the day before or the morning of an afternoon closing, if that makes sense. We're not going to do it right at the table if we can help it, or right before as we're, on our way in. You can communicate with lenders to confirm wires are scheduled on time. That's something we do as a title company. You don't necessarily have to call your lender and ask when they're going to send the wire. But if you're like on a text basis with your lender, it might be cool to, shoot them a text and say, hey, when can we expect the wire over to title? And then help sellers get necessary paperwork ahead of time. So HOA fees, mortgage statements, payoffs, POAs, anything that can delay the closing. So I think that is all I have for you on that. Questions, conversations about disbursement?
That was really good, Tiera. Thank you.
No problem. I had one time where it's not funny. It's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. But I had the situation where the buyer wanted to sign everything before they sent the wire. And of course, the agent told me, that was none of you. The agent told me that at closing. And it's summertime. It's like back-to-back closing. So I can't stick around, for too long. But I tried. I was there for like 45 additional minutes. Of course, the wire's taking forever to come through. And it turned into this big situation. And the agent actually, in my opinion, didn't handle it correctly, because she was kind of coming at me like, what do you mean you're going to leave? Well, what if we say we don't want you to leave? I'm like, well, you can't like hold me hostage here, But it was kind of on her partially to say like, hey, these funds need to be in before this deal is complete. Like, you're not going to have sellers at the table. They're okay handing you the keys and walking away from their house and not knowing when they're going to get paid. There are situations that come up. There are some things that you just can't avoid, and that's okay. But just when it comes to doing what you can to try to make sure everything is going to go as smooth as it can for everyone involved, I would just say make sure they know what good funds are. Make sure they have them at closing if it's a cashier's check, or the day before closing if it is a wire. And that's it. That's all I have for you guys. Any questions unrelated to disbursements?
No, I just wanted to comment, Tiera, we had that one like last week where the bank actually sent the wrong wire amount to you guys. So not sure if they were ones that do like a batch and they got somebody's confused, but that was pretty crazy because my buyer was adamant, like, no, I sent the right amount. I sent the right amount. And then it was like such a weird amount that came through.
Yeah, exactly. Anything can happen. Like it's so crazy. And that's why it's nice to get it in the day before, because then we would catch that, and be like, oh, hey, here's what's going on here. Now we have time to fix it, which I think in your case was fine. But it's a perfect example of why we should kind of be ahead of it, so we have a chance to make sure everything is in and verified. Down to the penny, because we have to be absolutely down to the penny within our escrow account. And that's like, sometimes someone will bring, or their check will be like 3 pennies more, And I am required to write a check back for 3 pennies because we have to have 0 extra money in our escrow account. Any other comments?
So what is the best case scenario whenever you have, like you're selling the home and then later on that day, then they're buying the home? When it's like a flip flop, what is the
Yeah.
best case scenario to set that up on our side?
So we do that often. So one is going to be to have your seller close as early as you can and your buyer close, or the purchase close as late as you can. Another option is to get the wire instructions for the next title company if it's not me, and we will wire it directly to the title company, so there's no third person, doesn't have to go into your seller's account and then they have to send it to the next title company. And then a third option is to request a seller proceeds check from us, so not a wire, and then they can actually endorse that check over to the next title company when they get there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I have sat in very awkward situations where we're sitting there waiting for the wire to come through.
Yeah.
And then the buyer on the other side was getting antsy because now he sat and waited, and
Yeah.
it was a sticky situation.
It is. Yeah, it can get that way. And honestly, when you have the same day closings like that, the best you can do is just try to schedule them as far apart as possible, or really set those expectations like, hey, it might end up this way, which isn't the best case scenario. I personally did that. When I bought my current house, I sold my house at 9 o'clock in the morning and I bought my house at 1 p.m. And now that I've been doing this for longer, I would say that's really not even enough time. I mean, it worked out. It ended up being fine. But even then I'd be like, maybe can you do 3 or 4 just to be safe, just so you don't have that awkward time where everybody's waiting. Seller doesn't quite understand. They're thinking, if I don't get my money now, I'm never going to get it. They just don't have the understanding. And so we have to kind of meet them where they are and try to make the experience okay for them and understandable and digestible for them. What else you guys got? I have a question. Are you guys all going to the headshots and happy hour on Thursday? Because I'm excited about it.
Yep.
Nice.
Yes.
Good. I'm getting all pumped up, getting my little table stuff ready.
I have to figure out what to wear.
I know. We just got headshots done, so I'm probably not going to partake in that. So I don't know what.
Well, you
I'm gonna
have
wear.
to. It'll be fun, and we can
Well,
put
I'm
your
just
face
going to cheer
everywhere.
everybody else on.
I mean, if you had an ugly face, I would tell you no, but you have a beautiful face, so that's why we need a photo of it.
Oh my gosh. Fine, I might. After a couple drinks, I'll do it.
Well, yeah. Once everybody's done with their headshots, then we'll get in there in groups after we've had a few and get some group photos.
Oh, cute. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, I'm excited about that. That'll be fun.
The photographer's there till 8. He's there the whole time. So we have lots of time. Photographer's there from 5 until 8. And then he is here at our office in New Brighton for our lifestyle photography the next day from 9:30 until 2:30, because we need some photos of our amazing agents to put on our new billboard signs.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
And our new collateral that we have around the office. So that'll be fun.
That'll be cool. I don't know what my schedule's going to be like that day, but I might stop by just to cheer them on and see what's going on.
Please come and jump in the marketing photo.
Well, no, I'm just here for support.
Well, we'll have lunch. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll put it on there and see what I can do. We our new headshots for humans are not up yet, but we were doing like the regular one, like the stuffy one, and then when you hover over it, it flips to a picture of like the real person. So something that they do in their life or a hobby or